Well, hello, everybody. It is so good to be back in the bunkhouse slash treehouse. I always joke that it looks like a treehouse because it kind of does, but it's actually a guest house or bunkhouse, we used to call it when we had a ton of visitors here. And it's so good to be back in my own environment, surrounded by wood, pictures, and of course, all of you. Thanks for joining here. I'm going to switch over to see if I can get some of these comments. I'm with Super Dave and Aunt Evans. Aunt Evans is my Sherpa guidesman along this mountain climb I'm trying to take here at YouTube. So always appreciate Aunt's guidance and his knowledge. And Super Dave is here to clean up all of my messes because fuck, we know how that goes, right? Super Dave, we're going to kick this off by answering some questions that we didn't get to in a couple of our other wise choices. So let's kick this thing off. David Hernandez, have you played the AEW video game, and are you aware of the controversy surrounding the game, particularly the complaints about the cost of downloadable new characters? David, thank you very much for that question. Sorry for the delayed answer, but I'm kind of peripherally, that's a tough word for me this early in the morning, David. I'm kind of aware of it. I have friends that are in the video game industry as developers and publishers, and that's a small world. They all know what's going on with other people's projects and things like that. So, I've heard just passing comments and things that indicate to me that it's been a pretty dismal failure from what I heard. Don't know if it's true. My name is not Dave Meltzer. I'm telling you right now, this is third-hand information that has not been verified. But what I have heard from people in the industry, that the game went dramatically over budget, like dramatically, and that it just didn't do that well on the initial downloads. But I don't know much about it beyond that. So I refrain from commenting about things that I don't know anything about and am clear when I'm passing along unsubstantiated rumors, because that's what that is. It's a fucking rumor. All right. Who's next? FT3. That's cool. FT3. I like that. Let's get a ring to it. Eric, do you think with Raw moving to Netflix, we'll likely get a show similar to Formula One, Drive to Survive, following different WWE talent throughout the year? Seems like a logical move. First of all, it's a cool idea. I think any additional content or any additional platforms that allow the viewer to get to know the talent without ruining their character, and that's the tricky part. I did a seminar for Ken Anderson in Minneapolis this past week while I was there, and I talked about how to get your character over, more specifically, the importance of structuring promos and making sure that you have a beginning and a middle and an end, and where to emphasize the things that are important in your promo and all that kind of stuff. But one of the questions that came up in that seminar from one of the students was, what about social media? Do you think social media is making it harder now for individual talents to get their characters over, or do you think it's easier? And I think the answer is both. Potentially, I think social media or any other form or platform like you're talking about here is a great thing if it gives you a little bit more, if you can relate to a specific talent more because of something you've learned. All right. But much like social media, you've got to be aware that you're still promoting a character here. So you've got to keep a little bit of that character alive. Otherwise, you've got, for example, people on social media, they're nothing but, they're trying to be baby faces, and they tell you about rescuing puppies and walking old ladies across the street and virtue signaling and, all the other things that people think are going to get them likes and follows. And then they're portraying this evil, dastardly heel on television in wrestling. Actors and actresses could get away with that in Hollywood because everybody knows that these are not real people, that they're actors and actresses. But in wrestling, even though it shouldn't be this way, the fact that the audience has been conditioned for so long to believe that the characters that they see on TV are close to the characters that are walking around in real life. And you don't want to pop that bubble. You don't want to disconnect a fan base from a character by revealing too much of what that individual is really like that conflicts with the character that they're trying to portray, whether it's in social media or a show like this. But if it can be done, and it can be done, I think it's a great way to, again, connect with the audience and make the audience care about somebody. Great question, though. I love that. That's why I like doing questions right off the bat, because it gets me in a flow. Okay, what do we got? Brian Richardson, love the show. I love that you love the show, Brian. Thank you very much. What are the chances Cody is better in the chase than as champion? Another great question. I often say that those who listen to the podcast 83 weeks or following me here on Wise Choices or anything else that I do tend to be the most enlightened group of wrestling fans out there. They have an understanding of the industry beyond what they read in the dirt sheet and the absolutely silly shit that exists in social media. But it's a great question. And the honest answer is I'm not sure yet. The one thing, and I noted this a couple of weeks ago, Cody Rhodes is as close to that traditional ultra baby face character that we've seen in a long time, probably since John Cena. And maybe in some ways even more so than John Cena, because John Cena, obviously, through various times throughout his career, of course, he was like he had that rapper kind of gimmick going on. And it was good, and it worked, and it was timely. But that didn't really feel like the real John Cena, at least not to me, partially because I know John and have worked with him. But with Cody Rhodes, what you see in the ring is not far from the real guy. And I think when you have that pure as the driven snow baby face that Cody's representing right now, there is a chance that some people will tire of it. And that character will need to get an edge, because if you look across the landscape of television, movie, TV characters, especially in wrestling, it's they like that baby face, but with that fine line where they could cross that line and get pretty vicious. So far, I haven't seen a lot of that out of Cody. So far, I haven't seen any fatigue in the audience because they're just getting a little bit tired of the pure baby face. But we'll see. Time will tell. One thing I do know is that Cody's a very, very smart guy, and he's surrounded by a lot of really smart people that can kind of see and sense that happening maybe before the audience in general does. And hopefully, if that's the case, they'll make some very subtle shifts in the way he's being presented. And voila, we may have a new version of Cody Rhodes, or not. We'll see. That American Nightmare thing could work in a lot of different ways, couldn't it? Great question. Love you guys. Appreciate it, Brian. What else we got? James Martin. Hey, Eric, the episode of SmackDown where you reveal yourself at Billy and Chuck's wedding was one of my favorite moments in pro wrestling. Thank you. One of mine too, brother. I think if I think back to in terms of what I've done on camera, there's two things that really stand out of my mind. One is the Chuck and Billy wedding, where I was the minister, and the other was working with Stone Cold Steve Austin in a match at No Way Out in Montreal. Those are the two things when I think about highlights for me personally. Those are the two that jump out at me most of all. Great question, James. Love you for sending it, brother. Thank you. And Joshua Crampton wants to know, if TK offers Eric an EP booker position, would he take it? No, I wouldn't. And look, it's got really nothing to do with how I feel about AEW or Tony Khan. It's really not that. It's more about where I'm at in my life right now. And every day that goes by, I'm appreciating my freedom, my flexibility, and more importantly, my ability to live where I want to live and do what I want to do on my own schedule. So committing to anybody, whether it be Tony or AEW or anybody or WWE or TNA or anybody else that would happen to call, or anybody outside of wrestling that would happen to call, that would offer a position that would be as intense as an executive producer, or I hate to use the term booker, it's dated, but you know what I mean, booker. Either of those opportunities would require a huge investment of my time and emotion. And I'm just not at a place, and probably travel, And I'm just not in a place anymore where that's interesting to me. It's really not. Could I make a lot more money? Sure. But I don't care. I love the life I have right now, and I don't see any opportunity really enticing me to change that. But great question. I appreciate it, brother. Little Jimmy Sorensen, one of my favorites. Little Jimmy Sorensen, one of the coolest guys around. I dig you, Jimmy. Big part of the Ad Free Shows family. Shows up at a lot of our events. Always good to see Jimmy Sorensen. Eric, have you thought about doing a sit-down live chat with Sonny? Oh, no. I do that every time I talk to Sonny. We sit down and mostly Sonny. I listen. I'm just kidding you, Sonny. Yeah, who knows? Maybe sometime that'll happen. Sonny and I go way back, like 1975 or 6 is when we first met each other. So, we've got a lot of history, some fun stories to tell, but who knows? That may happen. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate you, brother. Mike Browning says, I want AEW to do well because I think it's healthy for the ethos. Ooh, remember what I said? Enlightened ethos. It's the first time anybody's asked me a question on a wrestling platform and used the word ethos, either in an answer or a question. So Mike Browning, score big points with me right now. I want AEW to do well. I think it's healthy for the ethos to have more than one player, but I don't like them. Not even a little bit. Simple cure, brother. Not being a smart ass. Just don't watch them. That's all. I think for me, look, I'm pretty hard on AEW because most of the time they deserve it. But my passion about pointing out the flaws, the mistakes, the errors, and I've been doing it now for over 2 years. And all of the things that I predicted were going to happen because of my issues 2.5 years ago, are now coming to fruition. And I don't say that, and Evans just reminded me of this a little bit before the call. I'm not saying that because I know every fucking thing in the world about how to run a wrestling company or produce a television show. I just know a lot of shit because I learned the hard way. And for me, when I see people doing the same things, particularly when they repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again, while they have this amazing opportunity, which being on Turner Broadcasting is, and having the funding to pursue this thing called AEW is a massive opportunity that hardly anybody will ever get again in the future. And to see that opportunity kind of circling the drain, mostly because of making the same mistakes, not only making the same mistakes that I made, which anybody paying attention should be able to learn from pretty easily, but inventing new ones. And that's not to say, Mike, that everybody's going to make a mistake. Now, a mistake isn't even the right answer, even the right comment. Nobody in the world of creating anything is going to be on the money 100% of the time. It's just not. Great writers, directors, producers of feature films shit the bed on a regular basis. Now, you don't hear a lot about those failures because they usually pull them out of the theaters or take them off TV pretty quickly. But, man, you can't be in a creative business without creating something that you wish you wouldn't have at some point in time. But again, the answer is not to just keep throwing things up against the wall, but the answer is to ask yourself the question, why didn't it work? What was it I could have done differently that could have made an idea or a story or program or character? What could I have done differently to make it work? As opposed to just going, fuck, it didn't work. Let's go on and throw some more shit up against the wall without doing any real analysis or understanding the audience and why they're reacting or not reacting the way they are, or in some cases aren't. There you go, Mike. Thanks for the question. I appreciate it, brother. It's a little late, but hopefully it answered your question. Perp, Dire Witch. Perp? Wait a minute. I see hair. Purple hair? It's a nickname. Otherwise, I was going to be going, wait a minute. Where did that name come from? I was going to invite you for a baked dinner while you're in Australia, Eric, but didn't think you'd want to drive 6 hours. Well, you were right on the money with that one, Perp. That was a fast turnaround. About 25 hours of travel to get there. About 15 hours back. I was only there for a couple days. Between the jet lag and my schedule, I wouldn't have been able to go anywhere. But I appreciate the thought. Sometimes the thought in reality is just as valuable as actually going out to dinner. But I appreciate that. Who else do we have? AEW. This is from Swazi. AEW has the more intriguing top star. Cool. MJF will be a star and take AEW to a whole new level. Cody is stale and an early 90s face knockoff. Well, that's kind of what we were just talking about, isn't it? Cody is that pure 90s babyface that Hogan used to be in the 80s to a degree, early 90s. And we'll see. We'll see if the audience gets tired of that or not. I agree with you on MJF. I agree with parts of it. I don't think MJF is going to take AEW to a whole new level because it's not a talent-driven issue. It's a creative-driven issue. I think you could drop Undertaker into the center of the ring from a helicopter, have him rappelled down like Sting did, right? Put him in the center of the ring and start a program with him in AEW. And if Tony Khan is booking it, it's just not going to matter. It's not a talent-driven issue. It's bigger than that. And it's not even about just the writing. It's about the vision, the strategy, the tactics that support the writing, or the writing that supports the strategy and the tactics and strategy and tactics to grow an audience. That's the real issue. It's not talent-driven. But I do agree that MJF is probably one of the most exciting new talents in either company right now. No question about it. I agree with you there. Thanks, Wazzy. Appreciate you very much, my man. Get to a couple more. Trigger Cheese. I love some of these names. Trigger Cheese. I'd like to know where that came from. You and Christy always had great chemistry. Christy Olsen. We used to do a show called After 83 Weeks, a YouTube show. And that was fun to do. I really did enjoy doing it. But it was just, again, kind of a scheduling conflict and all that. Do you think there's a chance you will work on something again down the road? Love all your shows. Keep it up. Absolutely. I think a lot of Christy. She's really, I think, a underappreciated talent and has got a lot going for her. She loves wrestling. She follows it closely. She knows what she's talking about. So absolutely, I hope. In fact, I've recommended Christy to a few people that I know that are in the television business that were looking for somebody to fill a role like Christy could fill. So I think the world of her. And yes, we'll probably do something down the road. I just don't know when or where, but you can pretty much bank on that. She's a cool chick. Is cool chick okay to say? Am I going to get like Me Too'd for saying cool chick? Super Dave, what do you think?
No.
No?
I think you're fine. I think you've earned the ability to call somebody a cool chick.
Well, and maybe because I'm older and it's just kind of goes along with the era and the culture that I grew up in. I don't know.
Yeah, like if you drop Groovy right now, that was your time period, right? You said Groovy.
No, I didn't like groovy.
What?
It got over. It was one of those words, and there's a lot of words like that. It pisses me the fuck off. It's one of the reasons I get so riled up when I'm on social media. You can see the pattern of certain individuals that latch on to certain words because it makes them sound smarter or more evolved than they really are.
Uh-huh.
And like this one's more of a phrase than a word, but bad faith. Like when douchebags on the internet start using bad faith as part of their argument, they just take their douchedom to an entirely different level because they don't really know what they're talking about, but they use words that they see or they pick up in conversation with other people and they adopt it because it impresses them. I don't fucking do that. Like every time I see Meltzer use the term bad, the one thing you'll notice, Tony Khan and Dave Meltzer use bad faith all the time. more than just about anybody in the wrestling business that I understand or see. And then you read some of their followers, and of course they're all throwing it around like they know what the fuck they're talking about. It's just funny. And groovy was one of those words. Even when I was young, it's like, oh, everybody's trying hard to be cool. So everybody's throwing groovy into whatever sentence they could throw into to make them, to get themselves over. Fucking hate that. I never used the word groovy, even when everybody else was using it, like the fucking Monkeys. Remember the band? No, you don't remember. Fuck you.
Of course I remember the Monkeys.
You remember the Monkeys? I didn't think you were that old.
I'm not that old, but I do. Nickelodeon, Nick at Night used to always show the Monkeys when I was younger. That's where I got monkified.
I watched them develop, man. I went to a monkey concert once.
Get the hell out of here.
They had Monkeys concerts.
That's awesome. That's very cool. And
Peter Tork, Mickey Dolenz. Hey, I actually met Dolenz. I met Nikki Dolenz in a bar over in Burbank, California. I think it's called Casamigo. Was the name of the bar. And it's kind of a famous, and it wasn't like a fancy restaurant. It was a Mexican restaurant / bar. But it was really close to Universal Studios in Burbank. And I used to have an office right there on the Universal lot. And after work, Jason and I would always go over to Casamigo on the way home. Well, so did a lot of people in the entertainment business. So you'd occasionally, not all the time, but like on a Thursday, Friday, you'd go in there and you'd see somebody from the entertainment industry. Some of them big stars, some of them not. A lot of writers, directors, producers, kind of behind the scenes types would hang out there.
Yeah.
But one night, Jason and I were in there and I'm pounding nacho chips and probably had a couple beers. And I look over to my left and there's Mickey Dolenz. How about that?
Was he sitting alone?
No, he was talking to somebody. I was going to interrupt him. And, I didn't want to be that guy because he was, he was probably talking business because that's what most people did at the bars and restaurants in Burbank and Hollywood at the time. And I didn't want to be that guy. But I was, honestly, I wanted to be that guy. I just disciplined myself not to be.
Mickey was the coolest one of the bunch.
Dolenz, David Jones, Peter Tork. Peter Tork was the cool one. Mickey Dolenz was the drummer. I'm a believer. I couldn't leave her if I tried. When I saw her face, dun, 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 and I'm a believer. Oh, it was a great song. Perfect. But that was like when Groovy first started coming out. I didn't even use it then. And I was the nerdiest little fucking 12-year-old kid you'd ever want to meet. So if anybody really deep down inside wanted to be cool, it was me. But even then, I had the better judgment not to try to be too cool because it just didn't fit.
I love it.
See what I mean about just ads? You want to do a YouTube show? All you got to do is get people to ask you fun questions, and the show fucking writes itself.
We're 22 minutes in, and we're having a blast.
We're having a blast, and I've got to bail a little bit early today because I've got an interview to do with Ant, by the way, and I want to prep for that. But let's
keep them going. We got a bunch.
Well, let's keep going. This is fun. Jackie Sangria. Cool name, bro. I like it a lot. Eric, have you ever considered there are many fans of yours that have never even watched WCW, but were first introduced to you as the evil Raw GM? The best Raw GM of all time, I might add, although Adam Pearce is great. It happens all the time, brother. Jackie Sangria, it happens all the time when I go to, especially if I go to an autograph signing or convention of some sort, I'm meeting people, chatting and all that. I'll see somebody that's, 12, 14 years old. Go, oh, man, I loved you in Nitro. I go, wait a minute. Come on now. Your parents probably weren't even legal when I was on Nitro. So what do you mean you love my character on Nitro? Well, they get it on Peacock. Or I get people all the time, more specifically Jackie Sangria, that, oh, man, that era when you were the Raw GM, I really didn't know anything about WCW, but that was so great. So that happens all the time. I think between Peacock, the streaming platform, and all of the Nitros that exist there, plus, the couple of years that I spent as the Raw GM, there's an entire population of fans that remember me from Raw, but have no idea what I did in Nitro unless they're watching on the Peacock platform. So yeah, it happens all the time. And I'm grateful for it. So there's a lot of other people in my category. Let me tell you, all of us who go around and are doing conventions and seeing people and doing autograph signings, every one of us, whether we say it or not, are grateful to WWE and Peacock because Keeps us alive, man. It keeps the nostalgia alive. It keeps the interest in the 80s in some cases, or the 90s. It keeps all that stuff alive. And I think that's kind of cool. What else? UK Goalie Network. Okay. How about a 2-week transfer window with a trade deadline instead, including all 3 shows, so you could get some call-ups as well, perhaps 2 weeks after Mania? See, this is taking us back to the conversation we had a week or 2 ago about, maybe the draft as we've seen it now for the last couple of years. Maybe it's just kind of it was a good concept initially. It had a purpose initially, but I think it's just kind of gone flat. It's like an ice cold beer. When you take it out of the refrigerator, you take that first sip of that beer, you're thirsty, you've been out mowing the lawn or throwing a frisbee or doing whatever. It's hot outside. You come in, and the first thing you do is reach your refrigerator and you grab an ice cold beer and you pop that top off that beer and you take that first couple chugs and it's ice cold and those bubbles are doing their thing. They're massaging your throat. It's just unbelievable. And you set that beer down and then you get distracted. You go get on a phone call or go do something else. And you come back and you grab that same beer because it was so good. That first pull was so good. But by the time you come back, it's warm and flat. I personally think as good as that ice cold beer was coming out of the freezer or refrigerator, it has gone flat. And this is another great, what if question that could lead to some really interesting things to make the draft in WWE actually more interesting, because right now it's just not to me anyway. To each his own. A couple more here, I bet. Ooh,
okay, Eric, these are coming from our live audience that are joining us right now.
Oh, I love that. All right.
So we have a couple of new members to our 83 weeks membership on our YouTube channel.
JCX, JG. That must be a random generated tag or identification. But yes, just became a new YouTube member. I really appreciate that because I love doing this YouTube stuff. It's fun for me. I really, really enjoy it. If you couldn't tell, sometimes I enjoy it too much. And I'm trying to temper that because, I can get pretty excited pretty easily. But yeah, just use the word bad faith to me. Watch what happens. I dare you. But I do love doing this. And the membership, being a member of this is really cool. And I'm going to be, in fact, next week, here's what I'm going to start doing next week. Just for members. I'm going to do a 5-day water fast. Now, this will be my 3rd one this year, actually. Actually, no, 3rd one since November. And I'm going to, because a lot of people ask me, what's that like? How do you do it? What do you experience while you're doing it? So these will be short. Every morning, I'm going to get up, let you know where I'm at in my fast, maybe talk about where my weight is, where my energy is, where the challenges are, what I've learned in this water fast that I didn't learn on the previous ones. But I'm going to do that 5-day water fast starting Monday. So Monday morning will be my first morning, and I'm going to do it throughout the 5 days to answer any questions people have about, I know, it sounds weird, right? But people have questions about water fast. I, for one, am a huge advocate of doing a water fast, and I'll talk about why next week during our members only videos. But yeah, and then I'm going to talk about the following week. I'm going to go strict carnivore, and once I do the reset, and that's the way I look at doing a water fast. It's kind of a mental reset because it really forces me to discipline myself. And discipline is one of my flaws. Lack of is one of my flaws. It's too easy for me to get distracted and interested in doing too many things and just whatever. But going into a water fast forces me to discipline myself. And I do that because the other areas of my life need discipline as well, whether it's my work or my personal life or my spiritual life or whatever aspect of my life that needs to be improved upon. All of it benefits from discipline. So that's why I do them primarily. And there's some other health benefits associated with them. with why I do that. But I do the water fast, and then I go into, I'll probably do a month of being very, very strict about my carnivore diet. And that's where I really see big differences. And I'm going to do the same thing while I'm on that carnivore diet too. So, hey, it's not wrestling, but what the hell? It's interesting. At least it is for me, and I hope it is for you. Wow. Lewis, I've been waiting for you, Lewis. Thank you so much. We saw WCW/NWO branded pay-per-views. Did you consider co-branding the WCW shows as well? WCW NWO Nitro. Good idea, Lewis. I can't honestly say that that was ever something that was considered or discussed. Perhaps it should have been, but I don't think it was. But that's a really good question. Another enlightened listener here on Wise Choices /83 weeks, where only the most intelligent, enlightened, open-minded fans who are willing to learn something outside of the internet in a fucking dirt sheet. I love it. All right. Isaac Riston. Isaac, how in the hell are you, Isaac? Isaac, a Grammy award-winning writer, musician. Grammy award winner here with us on Wise Choices. Been thinking about you, Isaac. I know you jumped in a little while ago, a couple weeks ago, and I didn't really get a chance to say hi. But Mr. Bischoff, you're on record as drinking copious amounts of coffee. You think? What is your go-to brand of coffee? Oh, and happy Mother's Day to Mrs. B. Cheers, brother. Thank you, Isaac. My wife orders our coffee. She gets if you knew my wife, you'd already know the answer to this question, but she's did the research and has found an organic coffee that is the least acidic coffee in the market. And that's my go-to. It's smooth. It cop a good buzz, which is the only reason I drink it. It's not like it tastes great. It's just coffee. It is what it is. But it's got a good kick to it. And I love the fact that it's so low in acidic acid, very low acidics. That just makes it easier for me to drink it. Isaac, I hope all is well, man. Crank out some good tunes. Isaac actually wrote the opening song to Wise Choices, to Strictly Business, the podcast that I had with John Alba. Just said, here you go, brother. This is a Grammy award-winning musician. Just hands it to me as a gift. So we've got to thank you, Isaac. It's the best part of that show, or it was. Well, maybe not. But it made it better, and I appreciate it. And maybe because it is such good music, we should find a way to use it here on Wise Choices. We'll get to work on that, Isaac. Good to hear from you, brother. Hope all is well. Michael Scoggins, do you think wrestling promotions like TNA would benefit going exclusively to a streaming service like Raw, or do you think it's too early to tell? That's such a good question. And Michael, you probably wouldn't have heard this, and I wouldn't expect you to know this, but when the rumors first came about AEW and possibly Turner, while I was excited, I questioned. I didn't say this would be a better choice, but I did posit. How about that? It's the second time this year I've used the word posit in a YouTube or 83 Weeks podcast. I submit to you, there you go. I submit to you that perhaps, especially given the deep pockets that Tony has, that if he would have had the patience, perhaps, not for sure, perhaps investing those resources into building up a streaming audience where you have their emails and all of their information, building up a database. That's something that a lot of television networks strive to have. I can't tell you, and this is now going back to not early 2000s, 2012, 13, 14, 15, when I was still pitching TV shows to networks. Almost one of the questions they would first talk about when we were casting those projects is, okay, I see why you'd want to use this talent, but what kind of a footprint do they have in social media? How can they help us move the needle? How can they help us promote? Networks long ago realized that that database, that fan base that exists that exists with an existing personality or talent is a very valuable asset, which led me to submit the question and or posit, would it not be a better idea to look forward into the future? Now we're going back to 2019 or whatever, to look forward into the future. Look where the ball is going. Thank you, Wayne. Well, look where the puck is going, according to Wayne Gretzky, rather than playing where the puck is, or in some cases was. And with that kind of analogy in mind, I thought, man, if I was Tony Khan and had the billions of dollars that he has access to and I'm passionate about launching this brand, rather than launching my brand into an environment that I know is a deteriorating environment, because that's been going on in cable now for a long time, would it not be better to look long-term and invest an enormous amount of money to build my own platform, so that when the time comes and I have enough critical mass that when I go in to pitch my show, I'm not just pitching an idea. I'm pitching an asset, a proven asset, because that changes the dynamics of the discussion. And I just think it was an idea that I personally would have looked at. It would have not provided the short-term benefits, but in the long run, just imagine if today, as AEW is going into their renegotiations, they said, well, look, we've got a database of 70, 80,000 active fans, and here's the viewership that we get on streaming, because you can extrapolate those numbers, you can project those numbers, at least give you something to work with to help determine whether a project has long legs or if it's a short-term project. Great question. So proud of our audience. You guys are fucking brilliant. Frank Bruno. Hey, Frank. What's going on? Well, you can't answer the question, but Eric, I've been a part of AFS since its inception, and you are the reason I stayed on. I love your insight and your opinions. I appreciate you so much. Frank, that means a lot to me, because ad-free shows means a lot to me. And I'm going to be doing a lot more stuff in ad-free shows in the weeks to come. It's not all going to be about YouTube. It's not all going to be about the 83 Weeks podcast, because the ad-free shows family is like family to me. And I'm very grateful to be a part of ad-free shows, along with a lot of other people. So I appreciate that, Frank, very much. And be looking out, because I got some new shit coming your way. Got a new member, Peter R. Thank you, Peter R. Appreciate you very much. Oh, let's go back to Peter R. Just became a new member. I love that, brother. I love when that happens. The more, the freaking merrier. And you're going to learn about wrestling. You're going to learn about water fasts. You're going to learn a lot about shit that you probably didn't even know you were interested in, and hopefully you will be. But if nothing else, we're going to have fun, right? We're going to have fun. I promise that. Mike Hoop. Hey, Mike Hoop, Hoopster. What's going on, brother? I hope all is well. Because I am having a blast. I did get to go to Detroit. I left last Thursday, almost a week ago yesterday. And got to hang with my brother and my sister. Met them in Detroit on Thursday night. Went to Cloverleaf Pizza on Gratiot Avenue, 10 Mile and Gratiot, actually. It's in East Point. They used to call it East Detroit, but Detroit got such a bad rap that they wanted to rebrand East Detroit, so they call it East Point. I guess it sounds better. Maybe real estate value went up as a result. Who knows? But my brother and my sister and I went to Cloverleaf Pizza, which is where my mom and dad used to go when they first met. And Cloverleaf Pizza is famous pizza. They got an amazing thick crust pizza that I've not been able to find anybody that has anything remotely close to a Cloverleaf Pizza. Detroit has their own style of pizza. Chicago has deep dish, but Chicago deep dish is different than Detroit deep dish. And I learned a whole lot about the beginnings. How did deep dish pizzas come to be? Like who woke up one morning and said, you know what, this flat stuff, thin crust, nah, thick crust, I want to do a thick crust. Somebody broke the fucking paradigm, stomped the mold, threw it out the fucking window, and said, I'm going to give this deep dish a try. And they perfected that deep dish so much so that it found its way to Chicago. Deep dish pizza, there's a history behind it. Learn about it. Let me tell you something. It has a little bit to do with discarded oil pans from the automotive industry in Detroit. When oil pans to cars were flawed or a defect in any kind of a way, they were thrown out to be recycled. And some very, very, very ingenious Italians out of an Italian family that became famous for pizza in Detroit, and they didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have a lot of equipment. Times were tough. We're going back a long time now. Said, hey, there's these oil pans that have never been used. We could sterilize them and make pizza in them. Shit you not. It's a story I heard. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying I heard it. It kind of makes sense. Think about it. Anyway, deep dish pizza. But we had fun. We went over to my cousin Larry's house, and my second cousin Scott and Michael and their kids, and my cousin Kathy, who I haven't seen in decades, and a neighbor friend of ours. It's just a friend of the family. Just, we had so much fun. We went over to for my brother and sister to tour the house that we grew up in. And we're actually on our way to a store to buy some steaks because we're going to go over there and hang out and grill steaks and just kind of take a stroll down memory lane. And we're on our way to the house because I'd been there a month and a half ago. I'd seen it. My brother and sister hadn't, and they were dying to see it. But we were on our way there, and we got a phone call from the lady that owns it, and her name is Jill. She's a sweet lady, and she was crying. She could barely talk. And she let us know that her father had just passed a couple hours ago when she called. And obviously we couldn't make that happen. So you know what that means? It means I'm going back to Detroit for some cloverleaf pizza and to grill some steaks and hang out with Jill and her kids with my brother and sister. So, something to look forward to. All right, we got a couple more minutes here. Jamie Barker. Jamie, what is going on, brother? I hope all is well with you. What do you think your biggest impact you've had on the wrestling business is? I appreciate that you keep it real all the time. This is kind of hard to talk about. It sounds like I'm putting myself over, but as objective as I can be, I don't think I was the first person to take wrestling live every single week in prime time. If you don't think that is a significant impact on the industry as we see it today and the value of professional wrestling as programming, because it is one of the only live action forms of entertainment out there. It's not a sport. It's not. You can convince yourself it is all you fucking want to, but it's not. But what it is live action entertainment, which in many ways has the same attractiveness to a network as live sports, because there's very little live anything that you could see. I knew it back in 1995 when I launched Nitro. It was the first thing that I said we have to do to distinguish us from WWE, because they're live tape. Let's do live every week. That's one. I think objectively as I can be, and I'm not perfect, but I think the cruiserweight division and the emphasis that we put on the cruiserweight division, the spotlight that we put on the cruiserweight division for an extended period of time, we use it in the crossover, which other than the beginning of the show and the end of the show, the most valuable part of the show, if you're on from 8 to 10, is that 9 o'clock hour. And to be able to have something that was so fast-paced, so interesting, so unique, so different than anything else anybody was watching, having that cruiserweight action in the crossover segment more often than not, helped make Nitro what Nitro became. And I think it's opened up the doors for a whole generation now of smaller, faster, more athletic talent that we're now seeing everywhere. But you rarely ever saw before the cruiserweight division on Nitro. And I'm not suggesting nobody else, because I know the marks out there are going, this guy did it first. What about this? You fucking people. You make me laugh. You do. You make me laugh. And I appreciate laughing. I really do. I mean, especially when I'm on a flight, I got nothing else to do, and I've got Wi-Fi on the flight, and I'm looking at this shit. It's fucking entertaining. But while even Paul Heyman, sure, Paul used Rey Mysterio, Paul used a lot of other guys that were ended up in the cruiserweight division, but nobody had ever given them a platform. Nobody ever created a division specifically for them. And I'm not talking about light heavyweights, because you'd see guys light heavy, you'd see something like that advertised from time to time. But to create a real division, I think was one of the things that helped Nitro greatly. And I also think more than anything, it's opened up a lot of doors for a lot of people. And unfortunately, some of them don't even recognize it or understand it, because some of them are young kids that really weren't paying attention until they got much older. But anyway, great question. Those are the things I'm most proud of, by the way. I think introducing reality-based characters into the product, again, not that I wasn't the first one to do it. I was the first one to do it well and consistently on a national primetime platform. And I think that had a big impact on the industry. I think if you go back and look at Nitro and some of the criticism that I received from the douchebags on the outside looking in that had never been in the industry, like Dave Meltzer, oh my God, you're giving away pay-per-view quality matches on TV. He's going to kill the business. WCW is going to go out of business. Well, we all know how that turned out. And again, these are all things that were a part of Nitro that I think still have a dramatic impact on the industry today. That's why it's why one of the reasons I'm so comfortable about, showing my ass and talking about the things I fucked up. Because in balance, I'll take all the great things and the contribution that I think, again, I'm not 100% objective on this, but I know I'm comfortable knowing what I contributed in a very positive way to the industry overall. And I'm proud of that, which is why it's so easy to fucking laugh at the stupid shit I did, just so you know. Thank you, brother. All right, we're going to have to wrap this up because I've got an interview to do. I was going to go off. I had a couple rants in mind. Hadn't figured them out yet. Figured I'd just roll into them. But I've had so much fun answering these questions, and I appreciate you guys so much. I didn't want to cut anybody short. But next time, and it could be any time. So if you don't already have notifications hit, do that. You're not going to want to miss it, because sometimes this shit just hits me in a spur of the moment. And rather than going off on a tangent on social media, I'm just going to come out to the bunkhouse here and go off on YouTube. So, okay, we got one more. I don't want to leave anybody hanging. Salian Scholar is what it looks like to me. Hey, Eric, have you ever visited Wales? Yes, I have, a couple times. Or do you plan to go to any conventions there one day? I hope to go to a convention there one day. The promoter that's in Wales that has reached out to me a couple times, and he knows who I am, Jamie. So, yeah, I'd love to. I love Wales, love the history in Wales. I had no idea there was such a historically Roman influence in Wales, and I found that to be fascinating, along just with the architecture and the people and the landscape in general. Okay, that's it, everybody. I got to go. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time.